There you go.
Yes, we have this live signal on your section.
Okay.
So I guess we are.
All right. All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khairan to everyone for joining today's program to welcome and benefit from our esteemed guest, Dr. Heba Raouf Ezzat. MashaAllah, Dr. Hiba has a lot of experience under her belt. She spent time being an adjunct professor at the American University in Cairo. She's also taught political theory at Cairo University for almost 30 years. Mashallah, she is currently an assistant professor of political science at the Institute of Alliance of Civilizations at Ibn Khaldun University in Turkey, where she is also involved in and teaches at the sociology department. She is very widely published in both English and Arabic on many subjects related to global democracy, global civil society, Islamic epistemology, urban politics, and much more. A few of her publications actually include Towards a New Civility, which was written in Arabic, and another Arabic work of hers, which was called The Political Imagination of Islamists. Inshallah, today she'll be going into identity and how we can contextualize it through Islam when dealing with the challenges and issues that we face in our current time. So without further ado, we will go ahead and hand the floor off to our guest, Dr. Hiba.
Okay, thank you very much, Saida. It's a pleasure to be here with the brothers and sisters and to have the opportunity to talk to you. And I will just speak what I have on my mind because it's like we share mostly the same concerns and the same sort of quote unquote fears. I will be talking about fear today as well. So I hope it will be an interesting conversation. It's not like rather I'm going to teach you anything, but it's just reflecting together, etc. This is my approach for this encounter. So I chose the title Being and Becoming because I think that we are suffering in our modern times from speed. So sometimes we feel that we are changing and things are changing around us in a way that is uncontrollable. And sometimes we feel that we are very stagnant. So we want to achieve change and we can't. The circumstances are not allowing us, and there are obstacles, and there is a ceiling, sometimes even a glass ceiling, you know. So here we have to think about what being and what becoming means. And change is a sunnah of the world Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. And sometimes even on the personal level, someone can meet you after a long time and say, oh, you changed a lot. And you would say like, no, I didn't change. I'm the same. Actually, we change. We change every day. Our bodies change, our ideas change, and our psychology changes as well under stress, under moments of need to take decisions, etc. So I think that we are in a state of becoming all the time, and we have to be aware of it because whatever changes take place in our soul and in our circumstances and conditions, etc., should be at least be we should be conscious about what is going on in our world. I am talking, interestingly, this talk has been planned before the war in Ukraine. So before the world is anticipating, hopefully, inshallah, it will not take place, a third world war. And there is a sort of fear looming. And I have friends in different European countries who have been telling me that people started stocking food and going to the hospitals and sort of asking what can be done if a nuclear attack happens, and asking for pills in the pharmacies against whatever threats, etc. They can medical conditions they can face, etc. So it feels that fear is rising in a way, but fear has always been there. And I have been very much interested in some of the ideas one of the modern thinkers have been introducing to describe our age. Our age has been described in many different ways, but including a very enlightening and actually very explanatory term, which is liquidity. So there is so much liquidity in our times, and the post-normal times are about complexity and uncertainty. So many things are so complex, even in the analysis of international relations as a political scientist. Sometimes we have like puzzling situations and puzzling positions in front of us. I was just talking to my students, telling them that it was very interesting to see the United Arab Emirates support Russia, though it would have been much expected that it would support the Americans because of the economic and the strategic ties, but it opted for a more complex sort of position. And at the same time, if you see the relations between two countries, the bilateral relations, for example, you can find that the Turks and the Egyptians are having their own issues, against each other in Libya, a contradiction of interests, etc., conflict of interests. And on the other hand, the trade is going fine. So it's like this complexity, not only on the macro level, but also on the micro level, is there. You can find yourself in situations and conditions where you have to take positions that are not like, it's not straightforward. It's like you go zigzag in a way, and you have to combine some elements in different relations that you are in, whether they are relations with work colleagues, or if you are a student, the student community, and positions are more and more complex, which makes people very anxious. And I think that being and becoming in post-normal times is about taking the difficult decisions and struggling on many different levels, in order to try to reach what the balance that we are all looking for, a stable relation with the environment and the people around you, whether in the private or the public sphere, that you grasp what's going on in the world without being too overwhelmed. Because sometimes people, especially with the war on Ukraine, I have some students who said we stopped following the news. They said it's just too overwhelming. It's just every time we open the channels of information, we find so much information and just too much to handle. So focus on here and now. Focus on just the power of now. For the individual, focus on your issues. Follow the news on and off. Yeah, you should be knowing what's going on in the world, but don't let it take you from what you have as priority and what you have as wajib, as something that you have to fulfill yourself in your life. So this leads to a lot of fear, but it also leads to a lot of anger. So we find positions taken from that ambivalence and that sort of intermediate space between anger and fear. And this is also one of the things that we are facing. When Zygmunt Bauman was talking about liquidity of our time, he also talked about liquid fear, that we have been in fears that are coming from different sources. So we have fear regarding whether we are choosing the right profession, whether we are choosing even in the university and the right field of study, whether we are having the right relations with the people around us, whether we choose our mates and the people, our friends and the people we are connected to in the right way. How can we manage these relations, etc.? But also he talked about liquid time, that when you are doing so many things happen at the very same time, simultaneously, but also time has got this, the Germans are very good in their philosophy at talking about time as layers, but also at time as sort of the configurations and the trajectories of time and space. So you have so many things. You have the tradition, especially when people are living in what is called in sociology of migration, the third place. They want to be sort of connected to the tradition they came from geographically. They come from the North Africa. They come from India. They come from Pakistan. They come from Africa, etc. And at the same time, they want to live in the communities and in the society they are based in, because it's their everyday life. So this liquidity of trying to combine different levels of time is also very challenging for many people. And I think also this needs awareness about how to anchor yourself as a Muslim in the notions of time that are in our face. So we have between al-azal and al-abad, this world, our life in this world. So you should never forget that you have an oath that you made before you entered this stage in this world, وإذ أخذ ربك من بني آدم من ظهورهم ذريتهم وأشهدهم على أنفسهم ألست بربكم قالوا بلى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took an oath from us that He is the one and only. So this is the oath of Tawheed that we carry. And prophethood, basically, and different messages were to remind us, dhakkir. So it's a reminder of this responsibility, of this amana that we carry. And we have the Day of Judgment. So in between, you also have different sort of sectors of time. You have the here and now, you have the short time, you have the sort of meso and the macro levels of time and space. So in this realm, it's really confusing, and we have to anchor ourselves in our understanding of time and never forget the two levels of time that are sort of incirculating our existence in a way, and also how to deal with the different changing times in our time that we are living between the work and the sort of struggle in this world to become better persons and to become much more contributing to the world around us, but at the same time be very careful about not losing our eternal understanding of time, that at the end of the day there is a mission and there is a Day of Judgment as well, which is very challenging in such circumstances. The dimension of affection and how we manage our emotional life as well is very important. And I think that this anxiety that we face in our modern times is something that we have to give attention to. How much value do we put on human relations, and how much our new technologies have been affecting our relations with the surroundings, the surrounding social environment around us, and how do we make our choices in prioritizing. And this is a challenge that sometimes specifically women face. You have to sort of prioritize because you have so many obligations as well, and you cannot do it alone. You cannot play a tango on your own. It has to be done again within a family, and then when marriage is a new condition to face, then how are you going to manage all these? At the same time, not lose the affection and not lose the bond, and not feel that you are sort of treated in an unjust way, and not at the same time feel that anytime you can simply sort of break that bond, which becomes in times of anxiety, people jump to decisions that they are not very much reflecting on. And I think that this is what we face in our new generation that address us in many social problems, that you feel like the speed has affected also their ability to manage different social relations around them, and the notion of two notions, love and peace, are not very clear. So what is love? This is a question we get a lot. And also, how can we reach peace of mind and peace in our social environment, etc. And I think also that part of that is yani he did not mention that when Zygmunt Bauman was talking about modernity and liquid modernity and the conditions we're living in. But I think that at one point we also noticed that there is a degree of liquid religiosity as well, because people have take their religious knowledge from different sources, and hence putting it together in a way that is consistent is actually very difficult. And at the same time, they are facing this liquid modernity that is all the time undermining this endeavor of how to reach a higher moral ground and a higher religious understanding. And I think that one of the things that we have to use, usually people look to the future. So they say, okay, we want to have strategic thinking. How are Muslims going to deal with these challenges, etc.? And we forget that the Sunnah of Rasulullah and the Seerah are very important to look into the human condition in history as well. How the different societies have the same, actually, though the conditions on the surface look different, but the human condition itself is the same. People have the same needs, people have the same agonies, and they need guidance, and they need to sort of have a compass in their life. So I think that one of the things, this liquid religiosity that is taking people to very extreme sort of expression of their religiosity, and then after some time they just go back, and you can find this looseness in a way, and this pendulum. We have witnessed this a lot in different examples, and I think that this is also something that needs to be addressed. I was giving a lecture actually a few months ago, and the Arabic language is very rich because it enables us to use some words. So I was giving the lecture about the future of the Islamic movement between ad-da'wah wal-idda'a. Idda'a is pretendance, and da'wah is basically da'wah, the call for Islam. And I think that manufacturing the characters that became actually leaders and figures and public figures, etc., in a world of liquid modernity was very much affected also by the way we are thinking about stars. So we wanted to have people who are like a Western star in different arts, etc. So someone with a lot of followers, someone with an image, building it via the social media, sometimes even in a very professional way, the way they talk, the way they dress, the way they travel and give lectures, etc. And I think that when such individuals become so much put in focus, and then there are mistakes that, as any human being can fall into errors, etc., then it collapses and people lose the compass again. And I think that the notion of leadership needs to be rethought, because it has been very much affected by the sort of American type human development notions, etc. And we have to look into our understanding of how we are going to deal with our religion, and how we need leaders in the communities, but at the same time how these leaders can have the moral integrity, and how this can be actually deliberately addressed and discussed, etc. The circumstances we are living now, in which we are living now, apart from the modern world and that we are living in, actually, we're not dealing with, sometimes when we speak about Islam and the West, as if Islam is something and the West is there. So it's not that true. We are living in that world that has been shaped by the Western domination and hegemony, and by Western colonialism, and even in our structures in the Muslim world, the educational structures, the political structures, the nation state, and the Westphalian type of nation state, etc. So I think that one of the things that we have to think about is actually the challenges that we are facing. And every 100 years, the challenges we are facing are different, and hence we have to come up with new ideas. And I think that the battle that we are facing as Muslims now is a battle of ideas. So on the individual level, we are struggling with these modern conditions and postmodern conditions and changes and fears and anger and, the speed of the changes around us, etc. But at the same time, there are concrete Islamic issues which are on three levels. The level of religion: how do we understand our deen and practice it, and how we can serve it and present it. The second thing is the notion of the caliphate, the notion of the state, because the political is something very much into the human phenomena and the human condition. So you cannot sort of ignore it and push it under the carpet simply because there are like radical terrorist movements or something. You have to address the issue of what do we do in the political realm, whether as minorities or as majorities, depending on our circumstances as Muslims. And I think that the collapse of the project of the Islamic movements, the Islamic political movements, and sometimes the challenges they faced, but also the mistakes they did, necessitates that we look at a new type of response. Many of these Islamic political movements emerged after the fall of the Caliphate, the Ottoman Caliphate, or the Ottoman Empire, and we're trying to address to fill the gaps in a way. And then with the ups and downs, they made mistakes, and with the ups and downs, they faced challenges. Sometimes they managed to deal with them, sometimes they didn't. So after about 100 years now, what type of a new cycle of coming up with ideas and answering the challenge of the battle of ideas, how can we engage in that? And I think that this is part of becoming. Because if we are stagnant in our understanding of our own religiosity and the mission that we have in this world, while the world is posing at us different challenges, then we will not be up to the challenge. I was sitting actually today with a very dear brother, and he comes from South Africa, and he was talking about the experience of the South African Muslim community during the struggle against apartheid. And he said that Mandela at one point in one of the meetings said to the representatives of the Muslim community, which is a very small community minority in South Africa, he said to them, "Freedom is coming. Are Muslims ready for it?" So I think that this is a very, very eye-opening message. Like there are so many opportunities ahead, though we are in times of crisis. That is almost like the time on the international level and global order level, the time of the prophet. You know, you have these empires fighting against each other, and you have the sense of fear, and as if history is waiting for a new change taking place. And while some people might see the threats, actually we should be seeing the opportunities, because we are armed with the faith. We have that faith that gives us this sort of foresight and this hope in the future, and the ability to sort of come up with the necessary not only ideas but also will to change and seize this sort of interregnum in this world, while it is changing at such a speed. So I think that thinking about the battle of ideas and producing new insights and what Muslims should be doing in the future is something that is one of the most important topics. Our times are post-normal times, not only because they are complex and there is a lot of uncertainty and a lot of speedy changes taking place, but also because one of the things that the anticipation or the prediction of the modern Enlightenment project, that its unilinear understanding of history, and we are going to go forward to in a way of progress, the theory of progress, etc., did not come true. And some of the sort of social scientists are coining some of these notions, like that we are living in times of medieval modernity. So there are components of the medieval times, or what they call in the Western language, yani in the wording, medieval, and the post-normal. They go hand in hand. The postmodern, they go hand in hand. So you find phenomena that you might look at them and say, oh, this looks very medieval. You know, like for example, the fact that we have rising presence of the mercenaries on the international level and in global politics, for example. This has been going on in a very visible way since the war on Iraq, and it's now increasing, that there is a call for the volunteers. These volunteers are already trained and armed, and these are what we used to call previously mercenaries, but now it's called security companies or military service, military service companies or something like that. And they are crossing the borders, and they are actually part and parcel of many conflicts in the Middle East, and in Europe it will be also visible, and many of those are in the Western sphere, coming from a white supremacist background, and of course violence is the tool. So, and we had an issue on the global level regarding accountability and international law, and for 10-15 years now there has been an attempt to sort of make a code of ethics for or a code of conduct for these private security companies or private military services companies. So you look at that, and you look at like the writings of Machiavelli, and see like, oh, these are mercenaries. Actually, this is the word, but this was not anticipated at all with the rise of the nation state in a Westphalian sense. The regular armies took over, and people were told that they should not carry arms in order to defend themselves, because the state is going to defend them, and they should focus on their civility, one of the topics that we are addressing today. So, and then you see this medieval return of some medieval sort of phenomena, and this is very confusing, but it's also very important to study and grasp how the changing notions of power are actually on the international level posing a lot of challenges, and need new ideas to address what we are watching and what we are seeing. I think that to bring my short talk to a close and give more opportunity to discussion, etc. I think that that this complexity is on different levels. The complexity in terms of the circumstances and conditions, but also the complexity of the human soul, that has been presented in a way that would make it look simple. When we started our struggle in many societies in the Arab world and North Africa, we were told when we were young that once you are a committed Muslim and observant Muslim, you will have no problems in your life. And I think that this was very simplistic. Yani. When you are abiding by Islam, you face challenges, but you also have to struggle with so many conditions and challenges on the personal level and on the social level as well. And I think that it's not only about making strategies, but it's also about developing the ability to persuade and to communicate and to deal with the different challenges in a way where you can distinguish between different levels of use of language, use of force, use of networking, and when to do what. And I think this wisdom comes mainly from a lot of fiqh, a lot of understanding of the example of Prophet Muhammad and the seerah, because today when we were sitting with this very dear South African friend, he was giving examples from the seerah regarding how Prophet Muhammad in times that looked very much like ours, times where people can tend to be sort of hopeless in a way, that there are so many challenges and it's just overwhelming, etc. And he said that in these times, Prophet Muhammad, even when he asked some of the Sahaba to go to Ethiopia and to travel to Al-Habasha, he had this vision that if we are faced by challenges, some people might need to leave this community and be far from the challenges of direct challenges. And when he was facing the denial, he wanted to find allies, so he went to At-Taif. And then the Ansar came during the Hajj season, and then the following Hajj season, and then there was a window of opportunity, and it was seized during the time of Hijrah and established a new community sort of believers in Medina. And during that time, he was following what was going on the global level, and he told, because of he's a prophet, he can have his own bishara, yani good news, and he told his companions that he can see the fall of the different empires, the Quran and the revelation regarding Ghalibatul Rum in the Surah Al-Rum in the Quran. So it's like in times of anxiety, in times of challenges, in times of one can even say chaos in a way on the global level, and sometimes in our circumstances the speed of changes, etc. In these times we also need to hold to something that is very concrete, and not only to have strategies but also to have the ability to persuade, and knowing how to build alliances and how to face challenges and how to seize opportunities even in the hardest time. So I think that being and becoming of the Muslim self in this world, there is no prescription for it. I mean, no speaker can say, okay, if you do 1, 2, 3, 4, you will find yourself in this situation of peace and happiness. It's not like that. It's a challenge. And I think that you cannot do it without the fuel of ibadah, without the fuel of being in touch with the Quran, with the seerah of Prophet Muhammad, and all the time putting in your mind that this world is actually a world of struggle. And at the end of the day, you try to find your compass, and you try to correct your mistakes in a way, whether as a community or as an individual, or even at larger level as the Ummah. Some people have been talking recently about the return and the reimagination of the Ummah, sort of reimagining the Ummah in a way. And part of that was that actually the solution might come not from the mainland, but from the hinterland, not from the center, but sometimes from what we call the periphery. For a long time, people like myself, I'm an Arab, assumed that Arabs are the center of the Muslim world. Here we have the knowledge, and we have Al-Azhar, and we have the scholars, and we have all of that. But actually, the Muslim world is very wide. And how to grasp the cultural diversity, but also see the common goals and common strategies that can be sort of built by different initiatives and endeavors, etc., whether on the political level, on the social level, on the educational level, etc. It's important to readjust all the time this state of becoming on these different levels in a new millennium. It started, but this is not necessarily. If we take our own historicization and start with the fall of the Ottoman Empire, then we have had 100 years. What are we going to do in this new stage with these circumstances around us? I think it's a question that needs to be addressed in communities and needs to be addressed in circles of academics, in circles of ulama, etc. And there is no more this one person who will come and save the ummah. We have books written and published in Arabic for the last 30, 40 years, many of them titled how can Salahuddin come back, how to make a new Salahuddin. It will not be one single person. We have to start thinking in the collective sense. How can we think together? How can we benefit from different experiences? And how can minorities and majority countries in the Muslim Ummah interact, exchange experiences, learn together, and try to come up with sort of a vision for the future? And again, as I said, it's a battle of ideas, and then a battle of strategies, and then the way to persuade and to present our ideas to the world, because we are not living alone in this globe. I will stop here.
Okay, alhamdulillah. MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair for the extensive talk on the issue of identity as a whole and being and becoming. To get the ball rolling, you were talking about the sila, and you mentioned how you mentioned certain things about the sila. So I just wanted to perhaps touch base on the general issue and topic of being and becoming. When an individual wants to go into the sila to find that, where could they find that? And is that, is this an issue that was there from the beginning of time and then it changed and became something else? Because, generation to generation from the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to where we are now, obviously things are very different. So, of course, identity issues are very, very different now too. So if we find that in the Sirah, how could we contextualize that? And how could we interpret that and use that to our benefit too?
I think the starting point is the Quran, because it creates your conceptual map. And part of the Quran is history. Part of the Quran is Al-Qasas. I mean, these are not like bedtime stories. Al-Qasas is about in every message, how was the social reaction to the message, and what type of different societies can we classify, like it was in the works of Al-Farabi, for example, as an Islamic philosopher, or other philosophers and thinkers, from Al-Farabi to others like Ibn Haldun as well, how to see the differences between different societies, and the moral integrity and the moral frames that different societies had, and what were the problems in every society, so you can see the good and evil and try to grasp it. And this gives a lot of wisdom, by the way. When you read Al-Qasas, it gives you a lot of wisdom, and sometimes even the different types of da'wah, the different prophets. You have Sayyidina Musa, Hazrat Musa, who is like, he has a different character from Prophet Ibrahim, for example. He has a different character from Noah. He has a different character from Yunus. And you can see even the prophets as different characters, and the communities as different types of communities. So I think this is a very important starting point. So the Quran, when it takes this, like the different topics in the Quran, the beginning with the faith, and then the prophets, and the history of nations and communities and tribes, and then the Sharia, and how to understand how we act, and then the issue of values and morals and ethics, and the Day of Judgment, which is like, these are like mostly five topics in the Quran. And I think this is a very important base. And then you look at the temporal in the experience of Prophet Muhammad and what is related to his time, but also what is a lesson from that we can learn from his time. If you go into the details, you might say these were tribal communities. The world was very small. The communication was much difficult on one hand, easier on another level, and it's like a different world. It's different society, but actually it's not. Because if you draw the lessons theoretically from the different instances and how Prophet Muhammad dealt and the strategies that he used basically of building coalitions and making agreements and building the power of the community and at the same time extending the da'wah, there are so many lessons. The other thing that I think is very important, that sometimes I feel that we don't know Prophet Muhammad enough. We know him from the outside, that he is the prophet that we have to honor and we have to follow, etc. So it turns into as if it's a relation of power. And this is not the case. I mean, I think that reading the Sunnah, not only the Sirah, but the Sunnah, I mean, Al-Bukhari and Muslim, and take it back and forth. You start from page 1 to the end, and then you go back and read it again. And I think this journey that I did for academic reasons, introduced me to Prophet Muhammad in a way that helped me a lot through my life, because it gives you a sense of the person, of the Prophet, but also of how he dealt with different challenges and with different situations, and to see his sort of moral attitude, and to see his patience, and to see his strength, and to see how he applied each of that in the right situation, in the right way, guided, of course, by revelation, but as a human. قُلْ سُبْحَانَ رَبِّي هَلْ كُنْتُ إِلَّا بَشَرًا رَسُولًا. So you have the part of the nubuwa, of the risala, that he's a prophet, but also he is a human. This human aspect of Prophet Muhammad is not just about the emotional aspect of him with his, with his wives, and him with the community of the Sahaba. It's not that simple. It's actually very complicated and very sophisticated as a character that is dealing with such challenges, and you would think, if you are reading the section or looking at the part of the political community, that he would have no time for such nonsense as sitting with his wives and discussing trivial issues. But he did, and he used to joke, and he used to take it easy with them, etc. But at the same time, he also had so many faces, in a way, so many aspects and dimensions of his character. And I think that building the stable and balanced character is something that is extremely important for our times today. You find this radicalism, in a way. You find people shift from left to right. And even in our everyday life, anger is very easy. People don't have the patience and the sharp mind to manage situations, etc. And I think that from the very micro to the very macro, the example of Prophet Muhammad needs a lot of a lot of understanding and approaching and reading and grasping and how we see everything. You can see the Sharia from the surface, and you can also see the depth of it. You can see what is behind it, of a logic and of wisdom. I was just talking with one of the scholars recently about why is this division of inheritance in Islam, for example. So he was talking about responsibilities of men compared to the responsibilities of women in Islam, and explaining it from an economic sort of capital aspect. So I told him, but actually how I look at it is from the back. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this division of money that was very precise, with percentages, etc.? It must be not only about money, but it's also about the network of relatives, and the weight of the responsibilities, and where money and capital is just an indicator. But look at the bonds, look at the proximity and the distance, and also look at the fadl. We usually ignore, when we are talking about inheritance, that there is a verse in the Quran that says, and those who attended, give them a portion. So there are not relatives, even they might be neighbors or something like that. So the nature of bonds that this system of Sharia creates in all dimensions and in all topics, basically, I think we need a strong knowledge about our deen. And because of the speed, and because the lack of time, and because of the speed of everyday life in our modern times, etc., we rarely give enough sort of focus to this. And this is essential, because this is these are the pillars of building the character and also of building the community. And this has been done in a way that not all the time was very successful. And we have to look in a critical way of how we did it for the last 100 years, for example, because these are the experiences that we have in the 3-4 generations that are closer to us, and then see how we can go back to the example of Prophet Muhammad, read the Quran carefully and consider it to be our guiding text, and then look to the future and the circumstances we're living in. And it's not about only the individual, it's about building a collective mind in a way. So in any topic that we are dealing with, you cannot have one mind. In everything that I have been doing recently, we had all these consultation sort of circles, and every time we had more than one person participating in the decision making, the more we find that there is more wisdom added to on the table. So I think that it's a way of doing things. Logics of action need to be developed in a way that would make the Muslim mind more complex. And we have been also subject to secularization process. Sometimes you feel that we have, as if we have two lives. We have the Muslim life, and we have the everyday life that is more into the modern life speed, etc. And I think that we have to bring back this harmony for us to have a clearer vision of the future as individuals and as communities as well.
Alhamdulillah, thank you so much for that answer. I think that was very, very beneficial and very, very humbling. Actually, you mentioned that we know Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam more on many of us know him on a superficial level. We forget that, he was a human at the end of the day. And I really appreciate that you mentioned that, because we look at him as a prophet and we just leave it at that. But he had so many other dimensions of his character, as you mentioned, and taking that as a lesson for us to build our character to be strong and firm as a base is definitely something that we can do from the Sirah. And as you mentioned,
I also mentioned the persuasion and argumentation as important in da'wah, how we present our deen. But also it's important to look at how da'wah can be done by example. I mean, Prophet Muhammad, when you read his relation with the Sahaba, in many situations, he did not say much. He just acted, and they got the message. The way he looks at them, the way he behaves in front of them, how he changed the chemistry of people. So sometimes I asked, when people ask me regarding da'wah issues, etc. So I say, just try to be kind. Kindness is a language that Prophet Muhammad mastered, actually, and that we don't have. You feel sometimes that people who are in the forefront of da'wah have such cruelty, and they think that this is the strength of Islam and izzatul Islam, etc. But actually, if the rahmah is not going through as a message, it's important. And then there are situations when you have to be very strict about what you're doing and to be very firm as well. But the wisdom is when to do this and when to do that. And I think that Prophet Muhammad is a very good example. And the more, and it's not just about reading a book. It's about you keep sort of following his sunnah in the books of sunnah and his seerah. And every time, it's as much as you read the Quran. Every time you read the Quran, there is something new that unfolds in front of you of meaning. And you say, oh, I didn't notice that before. I read that verse many times, but I didn't notice this and that. So it's a continuous relation with what we can call the light. Because it's not only about law, it's about the light in the heart, the light and darkness. It's about that this message is light. It's light in all aspects of being a light. The Quran was described as a light as much as it was described as a mizan, as a scale. Also it was described as ruh. وَكَذَلِكَ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ رُوحًا مِّنْ أَمْرِنَا. It's a spirit. So you have the light, the spirit, and the mizan manifested in the Prophet Muhammad, who is also light and spirit and mizan. He had the wahi, and he is the mizan in his actions, and he also is the nur, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described him, وَسِرَاجًا مُنِيرًا. So if you look at these aspects and dimensions, they themselves rebuild your own soul and your own self with a capital S. Yeah, it's an ongoing process that needs lot of help from each other. We should help each other, nasiha and working together, etc. But there is also an individual journey on this track that needs to be you need to embark on it. You cannot just leave it to people sort of giving you nasiha and helping you. You have to have your own journey as well.
Yes, Jazakallah khair. it's very important for us to realize that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was the ultimate master at kindness, and that we can definitely incorporate that into not only our sayings but also our actions, because that's how people remember us. When we act kindly and we react kindly, that's people will definitely remember that about us. So there was a question that a sister asked. She says that it was mentioned that we are in a battle of ideas, with the two major ones being the level of religion and Islam as a political entity. What other ideas are we battling that we need to develop solutions to?
I think what we share with humanity, what we share with other nations and other religions and faiths, etc., which are the challenges of this world, of a world of a global nature. We are facing so many challenges: war and peace, justice, equality, fighting racism and populism, bringing back reason to people's heads, the battle of mercy and forgiveness, and reaching out, the battle of having a power, because you are in a world, always it has been like that across history. Yani, if you don't have power, you will be subject to aggression. So many levels, whether on the again on the individual or community or ummah level, that are important to address. And you name it, women's empowerment according to the Islamic faith. So I'm not a feminist, yeah. So this is an issue, and you have to go to statistics as well. You know, it's like you have to know, why do we have such high skyrocketing percentages of divorce, for example, especially in some communities in the first year of marriage. How can we address that? Is it because people are not good, or is it because the circumstances are just too much to handle, or is it because the community is not helping? What is the problem? So if you go to the sort of empirical studies, etc., it will help us also see the world of Islam and have these maps. I always address my students and tell them that you have to have a map. And I was brought up in a home. I don't know why my father did that, actually. I never asked him, but I had in my bedroom on the wall a big map of the world. And this somehow explained so many things to me, and it kept me all the time, when I think about the topic, to zoom out, to look at it from the perspective of the world map. How far can we, even when we are talking about issues of women or issues of social justice or poverty, etc., it's the map that can explain to you. If you're saying in Islam we should do this and that, you find that most of the time we're talking from our culture. We don't see the differences on the map, and traveling helps you recognize that. You know, you start to grasp that actually within the wider ummah, there are so many cultures, and they have been coexisting, and they have been actually very productive in introducing solutions to different problems, and the solutions went from one place to the other. So one ummah managed to find, one part of the ummah managed to find the solution, so the rest got it and tried to develop it further. Science, ilm, whatever you name it. So I think that there are so many issues. There is not one issue. There are as many issues as the Sharia addresses, you know. So in all these issues, we should be actually introducing solutions, for not only for ourselves but also for humanity, because we are part of that humanity, with the connectedness and with the global opportunities and window of opportunity. Instead of considering to be a challenge, we should see it as an opportunity as well. One of the things that now we are having challenges in da'wah, and this is why there are strong there is so strong missionary work done in Muslim majority countries like Indonesia, for example. So this is one of the challenges. Just to give you an example, what is attracting people to Christianity? Well, they actually have this Islamic heritage. How can we figure out what's going on? Is it that the da'wah was stagnant in these countries, and the scholars did not have, and the preachers did not have enough knowledge about how to address the issues of the people? They kept just repeating what they used to say in the khutbah for tens of years or something? Or is it because there are financial and economic challenges that force people to go into missionary schools, etc., so they become acquainted and more closer to other ideas and religions? What is it? What is going on? When you see the poverty and the issues of migration, for example, how to accommodate these communities and how to guide them to find their way in new circumstances and conditions they did not choose. The Syrians are facing a lot of problems. For example, I've been in touch with the Syrian community in different European countries, the youth are completely sort of taken by the Western culture and everyday life, etc., after coming from a war. And then the traditional way of introducing Islam to them is not sufficient. It's not giving them enough answers to the questions they have. So such problems need to be addressed. And I can't think of a list here because it's so many topics. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair for that answer. And we could, we could actually take one last question. So the sister asked that it was mentioned that we shouldn't see ourselves separate to the West. Now, is there a way that you could advise us how we can live in the West without being caught up in those ideals and distinguish ours from theirs?
I think that you have the guidance of the Sharia and you have the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad and his Sunnah, and this gives you your character, very distinct character. But also at the same time, we share with humans many things. We share the problems in a community, we share the struggles in a community, we share. So what is it that you have to distinguish yourself in firmly and state that Muslims, as a Muslim community, we cannot do this, we cannot accept that. And where do you bridge the differences and build coalitions? And I think that this is one of the lessons of Prophet Muhammad. Yani he was trying to find a way to build bridges, whether bridges of building the Muslim community itself, bridges built in Medina towards the Ahlul Kitab, to the people of the book, and then going even further to start building bridges with empires, sending messages and communicating. And so it's like you know where you stand, but you also reach out and you can be engaged in action. One of the things, I will give you a very random example. I lived in London for some time, and Muslims were celebrating that they can buy churches and turn them into mosques. And for me, this was frightening, because if churches are being sold, it means that this society is losing its faith. And I would rather live in a community where there are practicing Christians that are sane, that are not like fundamentalist, white supremacist or anything, but like good practicing Christians, kind ones who reach out and who do their social responsibilities, etc., rather than live in a place where there are overwhelmingly non-believers. Why should I celebrate that we bought a church and that people don't go to their churches anymore? It does not mean that they will come to our mosques, by the way. So they are somehow lost souls. But what did we do about that? And I think that the Muslim community in many countries has realized that it cannot separate itself from the community around. Maybe there was an excuse that when they settled, they wanted to preserve the culture within the community. But now you cannot bring someone from a local mosque in A or B country, from this X or Y country, and then put him in a mega city, in a globalized city, and ask him to address the questions. He doesn't have the knowledge. He doesn't have the imagination to answer these questions. And I think that more and more we have to realize the gaps and fill them, and have this strong Muslim character that cannot be affected by what is around him, but rather sort of contribute, instead of just being imprisoned in our fears.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair for all of your responses that you have given today. Alhamdulillah, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Heba. I'm sure I can speak on behalf of everyone that we really appreciate all the information that you provided us with. On behalf of Dr. Qasim and also everyone else who was able to join, Jazakallah khair for all the beneficial information that you provided us with and for answering our questions with your helpful responses. And thank you and Jazakallah khair to everyone else who was able to join. May Allah bless all of you. And we hope to see everyone again for our next program, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan, ahsan al-jaza. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
See you, inshallah.
Inshallah.